meet with them, and when you sit with them and you talk and they share their heart, there's a blue line. You've heard the term the thin blue line, and there's a reason for that, and I understand what that is now, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But I've always had a very strong respect for the police, the military, fire. Hey, when I was a kid, for you young people, when the police car drives by, all the kids would wave. When the firemen went by, we'd wave. When we would go into a store and we would see a military officer, or we'd see somebody with the Veterans of Foreign War, we would salute, or we would wave, or we would smile at them. And how we've lost that, I don't know. But I've always had that deep respect for those. My uncle was one of the very first special operations pilots in Vietnam. And what they used to do there was they were the medevac pilots. So they would fly in to pick up our guys that were really badly hurt, and they would fly them out. Well, somebody came along with the idea and said, hey, why don't you fly in like the best of the best and drop them off when you're picking up the guys in the most hot zones. So my Uncle John, who was buried in Arlington National Cemetery a few years back with full military honors, I have always had a deep respect for those people. So I'm serving in different ministries, and one day God has been working on me, and the Bible tells us that we are to become disciples. It doesn't call us to become converts. Jesus calls us to become his disciples. And a disciple is somebody who's following Jesus, who's being changed by Jesus, and is committed to the mission of Jesus. So I'm just praying, God, what would you have me do next? What would you have me do next? And I had become very good friends with now Sheriff Wolfinger. And I went in and I sat down with him and I said, Sheriff, God's put it on my heart. Is there anything that I could do to maybe serve our law enforcement officers? I mean, the suicide rate's double. The depression rate's 400% of what it is for just people walking around. I just love these guys, and I'd love to do something. He starts laughing. He said, so you don't know? I said, well, there's a lot of things I don't know. Can you fill me in? And then he said, we just started a patrol chaplain group for our law enforcement officers. Now, I went, oh, and in my mind, any of you seen the movie The Exorcist years ago? Yeah, so in my mind, I hear the word chaplain, and I see the guy with the little suitcase in the fog, and I'm like, I don't want to do what? I don't want to do that. He goes, no, you don't understand what we mean, because that was my vision of what a chaplain was. Well, that got changed quite a bit. So what we are is we're a group of patrol chaplains, and what that means is what I'm wearing right now is actually a little different than what I would normally be wearing. I'm normally wearing a $1,000 bulletproof vest. I have a tactical tourniquet on me. I've been trained in tactical first aid, able to stop, deep bleeding, chest seals, those kinds of things if my officer gets shot. We are instructed and taught how to deploy the rifles and the shotguns in the car if, God forbid, it really, really goes south and we have to try to help defend ourselves and maybe even defend the officer. We are not sworn officers. We are not police officers. We cannot arrest anybody. We are there as volunteers. We are there for spiritual and emotional support for not only our law enforcement officers, but for their families. But most of the time, when people see us, it's at the door. We're there for some really bad news. We're there to comfort a family, to tell them that their family was just killed in a car accident or worse. In the last 4 years, I've been on a little over 150 call-outs. Me personally, that's not the rest of the team. It's almost double that. But I've been on 150 call-outs, including shootings, suicides, a lot of teenage suicides. I did a funeral for a 13-year-old who killed herself a few months back in front of 700 people down in Kootenai County. She didn't do it in front of 700 people, but it was one of our firemen's daughters. 6 months before that, I did a funeral for a 16-year-old who shot himself, a fireman's son. We've had, you name it. It's interesting because I didn't know when I went into this, as the general public, if you had any clue what goes on 1/2 inch under the surface, you wouldn't believe it. We can't even make this stuff up, the things that go on. And our officers, and now we are working with our fire department people as well. And at some point, I think our group is going to transition into that as well. But what our firemen see on a daily basis, I cannot tell you the number of times I have gone to an active CPR where they're actively CPRing, trying to save someone's life. And guess what? It doesn't look like it does on TV. They don't do this little number. It doesn't look like that. And hangings, they don't look like that. And some of the other things, which I won't get into, they don't look like that. And our officers see that every day. And then they got to go home. Then they got to get in the car and go to the next one. We work with our dispatch, the 911 center. This is what they get. I need help, I need help. This is what they hear. Have any of you ever read a book and then seen the movie? Which was better? Why? This is what's going on. Okay? That's what our dispatchers, the average lifespan of a dispatcher career is 10 years. And most of them die from diabetes, heart disease, because their coping mechanism is we work with our dispatchers as well. I'm going to tell you two stories because today's a little bittersweet for me. Today is May 5th, and outside of being Cinco de Mayo, does anybody else know what today's anniversary is? 4 years ago today at 1:30 this morning, Officer Greg Moore was shot and killed down in Coeur d'Alene at 1:30 in the morning by someone whose name we won't say. And every single one of those guys that were involved with that, matter of fact, Greg's best friend is now one of our chaplains. He retired from law enforcement after that. When Greg was killed, there was no law enforcement chaplaincy in place. And that's Coeur d'Alene City, so I'll just be clear. That's Coeur d'Alene City. We're mostly Kootenai County and North. But I got to kind of see what that looked like. I'd call it second or third hand because it took 2 years to put that guy all the way to trial. So he went to trial 2 years later. And one of our prosecutors, great Christian guy, Larry Kirkhart is his name, he called our office and said, hey, listen, these officers have been sitting on this for 2 years, and they're going to now have to go up and testify what they saw. Would you have one of your chaplain or a couple of your chaplains just kind of available to them if they need to unload a little bit during this trial period? And we don't know those guys. We hadn't met them. They don't even know us. That's very difficult to get them to share anything when they don't know you, right? But even then, I sat across the table from guys before they were going to go and testify, and man, it's just like looking at a volcano. There were guys, there were police officers who only stayed with the force to get through the trial, and then they quit. But they stayed on the job for 2 years suffering so testify for their friend, just so they could honor Greg. I mean, everybody loved Greg Moore. And I saw that, and it was like, this is just wrong, that these guys didn't have somebody front and center to be there for them, to be there for their families, to love on them in the aftermath of this thing. So I'll tell you a second story. A couple years ago, we had two officers up here, Mike Gaon and Justin Penn, Bonner County Sheriff's officers. They were shot in the line of duty. Praise the Lord, they didn't die. But here's the difference. When they were shot, Sheriff Wheeler, who's now a very good friend of mine, he talked with Kootenai County and said, hey, this is what's going on. If you want to see something that I don't care who you are, when you see a hospital floor where there's 100 different uniforms and there's just one uniform, the firemen, the police, there's no agencies. This is one of ours, right? Well, in this particular case, this is how this was handled. Sheriff Wheeler, again, super sharp guy. Ben Wolfinger, super sharp guy. They communicate. When Leah Penn, who is Justin's wife, and when Julie Gaon, who's Mike's wife, when they showed up at Kootenai County Hospital, I was the first person that they came in and saw. We went straight into, the hospital helped us. We went straight through, we went into our own little room, and we hit the floor, got on our knees, and we sat there and cried and prayed together right then and there. I have remained good friends with that family, both families, since then. When we went to trial, and they were, for the guy that did it, right? When we went to trial, and they had a sentencing because they didn't do a trial, they did a plea bargain or something, however that worked out. But I sat, so here's the trial, so here's the judge over here, here's the front row of seats, here's bad guy, here's prosecuting table, and so here's how the chairs went. We had Sheriff Wheeler right here, Under Sheriff, myself, Justin Penn, Leah Penn, Mike Gaon, Julie Gaon, right in the front row. And I sat and watched, during the penalty phase, I sat and watched the body. When you watch a video of a guy that you now know screaming and crying, and I don't want to say too much with the kids here, but just what you see, that changes your life. And, I reach over and hold a grown man's hand and squeeze it as I'm fighting tears. These guys are doing pretty good. I'm not at this point because I love these. But the difference between having somebody there, and I'm not saying it's us. Listen, I'll tell you how I train our guys. They go, what do I do when I go on a call? What should I do? What do I say? What do I say? I go, okay, here's what you do. Here's what you do. Okay, you ready? This is how you're going to plan it. This is your script. You ready? Jesus, I got nothing. You're going to have to talk. And I will tell you what, when he shows up, and sometimes but he speaks, and some of the things that come out of our chaplains' mouths, we're like, wow, I had no idea I was that smart. Well, you're not. We're not. But we're just vessels. God's using us. People say to us, you've got to have the hardest job in the world. No. And when I went to my first training, personally, now I've agreed to do this, right? I've gotten over the whole exorcist with the suitcase thing, and I know it's more than that. So I go to do the training with at the time, the jail chaplain, and all we talked about was death notifications, and death, and dying, and death, and death, and death, and death, and death, and dying, and all you're going to do is death and dying. And I came home, and I got this look on my face. My wife says it's called like the headlights or the little bunny look. She goes, what's wrong? I go, I don't know what I just signed up for. She goes, what do you mean? I go, all we're going to do is deal with dead people. And she goes, honey, it'll be okay. You'll do fine. It'll be okay. And I will tell you, first time I went on a death notification, I will never, ever, ever forget this. So what happened was, we're out on ride-alongs, and I said that earlier. We ride along in the car with the guys. I mean, I'm going on shift on Wednesday. I'll be out in the car for 8 hours with a guy, riding around. They run code. They do 110 miles an hour if they have to. We go in. Don't do is like if people are shooting, they don't say, hey, get out, run in there, because we don't do that. But basically, outside of that, we're in the car. So we get a call. This lady has died at her house. We show up, and there's the lady dead on the floor, and we start talking, and it turned her boyfriend. She was an older lady. She was about 70, I think. She had a boyfriend, a sweet man, and he said his son lives in Coeur d'Alene. So the senior deputy said to me, he goes, okay, Bob, you're going to go do the notification. I'm like, okay. So we go down, I get in the car, with one of Kootenai County's shining stars. This guy's on the SWAT team. He's one of the canine officers now. I mean, this guy's is a man's man. I mean, this is any young boy, this would be a role model, this particular deputy. I get in the car with a guy, and I mean, my heart's just doing this number. And I'm thinking, I just want to honor this man. I just want to honor this young man. Because I'd lost him. I just want to honor this young man. I just want to honor this young man. And I get to the guy's house, and when we get to the door, the officer's job is to make sure that nobody kills me. And you can imagine sometimes people don't react real nice when you tell them that kind of, okay? I mean, and it's a given. We kind of know we might get slugged. It is what it is. So I show up, we get in the door, and he immediately takes a position. I can just see it in my mind's eye now. He takes a position of overwatch to make sure nothing happens to me. The guy was very nice, 40-year-old guy. We go into the house, we sit down on the couch. What are you doing here? Well, can we just talk to you for a minute? Okay, so we go in and we sit down. He's sitting on the couch, I sit next to him. It just so happened, praise the Lord, that his best friends happened to be visiting right then. They were at the house. We want a support system, right? We don't go and tell someone this has happened and then leave you alone. We don't do that. So these guys are sitting there, and I go in and I sit down, and I, nervous as all get out, and I tell the guy what happened. And he starts crying, and of course it's horrible. It's his mom. We talk and talk. Of course he feels guilty he wasn't there. I mean, it was her time. Jesus took her, okay? But afterward, this is what got me. I mean, I was already committed, and this goes for every one of our chaplains. I was already committed, but this was it. This was the anchor. We get ready, we're done, right? And this guy, I mean, again, this cop, I mean, he's not a jerk, but I mean, if you looked at it, guy gets up, and the guy, first of all, the person we told, he goes, I cannot believe that you came to my house to tell me this. Well, of course we did. We wanted to honor your mother. I just can't believe you guys came here. Well, the sheriff feels it's important. We volunteer to do it. Our officers feel it's important. He looks at the cop, and the cop, again, Mr. Stillick, is standing like that. The guy looks at him, and the cop goes, "Come here, big guy." And he goes and hugs him. I just lost it. It's like, and that's how they are. That's how the Bonner County deputies are. That's how our police officers are. They are good, solid, kind, loving people. And when people see them in any other way, they are fulfilling a role. Their role at the time is a law enforcement officer, and they spend their life with their head on a swivel. Who wants to kill me today? Who wants to kill my family? Who want you through a store, and I'm walking with my family, and I make eye contact with somebody who may have arrested me. I want to get my wife with me. I don't want them to see us together, because I don't want that guy seeing my family. That's how they live their life. But when you come down to the core of it, that's who they are. He hugged that cop, dropped and just bawled. I got home. My wife said, "How was your night?" And I told her what happened. She goes, "Well, how do you feel about it, honey?" And I said, I have never felt more honored in my life that out of 7 billion people on the planet, that God allowed me the honor of being there to love on that guy at that moment. That's our job. That's our calling. That's what we go through. So one of the things that Larry Green, our old chaplain, had said to me was, he said, when you get to a scene, the entire dynamic changes. I said, what does that mean? I don't understand. What does that mean? I can't explain it. You'll just have to see it. You'll know. The entire dynamic changes. Well, I know now. I know what it is. So what happens is, and you guys, you understand this. You know that in Ephesians it says that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, right? It's against the principalities and the powers. The reason why our officers, our first responders, the suicide rate and everything is so high is because this is an area that the enemy has lied and claimed for his own. How many of you have read This Present Darkness? Frank Peretti. Okay? If you haven't read it, you should. That's real. That goes on. That's real. When I walk into a scene and a young person has just done something to themselves, you can almost see them. You can almost see them, what's going on. You remember the story of Elisha's servant? When they were surrounded, right? And I can just see that, and I don't know how to paraphrase that story, but Elisha's in this small village with his servant, right? Elisha was the prophet that was after Elijah, and they're surrounded by the enemy, and the servant is terrified. They're going to get us. And I can, again, this is the new Living Translation. I could just see Elisha saying, "Hey, can you just show him? minutes, just show him. You know, and he saw the armies and the chariots and the fire and all that stuff. Is like, can you just imagine that? Well, as a law enforcement chaplain, we walk into a scene and the enemy is like, let's pretend it's a suicide for a minute. I mean, they're high-fiving each other. We had a great day. This is great. We got this kid. The family's life is destroyed forever. The officer, the firemen that were here, they got a kid just like that at home. This is great. We bring the Holy Spirit to the party, and you can almost hear, uh-oh. And I mean, it's tangible. And when we make eye contact with the mom or the dad or whatever, it's the only way I can describe it. Their soul is seeing the Spirit of Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and going, oh, you're here. Finally. Help. And then everything changes. Does it make it better? Well, no, it doesn't make it go away. But what's happened is now the Holy Spirit has been invited into the worst of the worst. We meet people in the worst 20 minutes of their life. Jesus is the only true healer. He is the great physician. One thing about our organization, and Pastor Jerry made sure to confirm with me, to be very clear to you. So in state, federal government agencies, like the military, the state, city, county, so on and so forth, you guys know that the laws have changed very much in that when it talks about religion. So obviously, if we come to someone's home, oh my gosh, wait a minute, do you go to my church? Oh no, okay, we don't do that. We don't care who it is. You know, we want to serve like Jesus did. He didn't do that. As a matter of fact, he did the exact opposite. So, just like Bonner County can hire the Salvation Army, let's say, to clean up, well, that's a church, but they can hire them to do that. There's no issues. They just can't say, well, only Christians can be a Bonner County chaplain. But if they want to use our organization, and this is going on in different parts of the country, by the way. Spokane's been doing it for 30 years. They've been through 7 sheriffs, only 1 was a Christian, hiring this Christian organization to do it. So we've done the same thing. We formed a 501c3. All of our people are ecclesiastically endorsed or ordained in a Christian church. They sign a statement of faith. We're all singing out of the same hymn book. So when one of our NIPOCA chaplains, which by the way, it's quite a process to become one of our chaplains. When one of our chaplains shows up, we know how the people are going to be treated. The officers know how the people are going to be treated. They're not going to get proselytized. We're not going to be there you need to believe what we believe. Jesus' ministry was very simple. He acted, then he spoke. People saw Jesus touch the leper and then went, why are you the way you are? And if you would be like that to that guy, then you'd probably accept me. That's how he did it, period. He loved on people when no one else would, and then they said, well, I could follow him, sure. And then they dug in. So NIPOCA, our group, now is preserving the purity of the Christianity in our chaplain group. As we continue to grow, and we have about, like I said, we have 10 guys in our group right now. Our goal is to have 30 within the next 2 years. We want to have a 12-to-1, and I didn't come up with that number if you think about it. We want to have about a 12-to-1 ratio of chaplain to law enforcement officer. All of our guys, that work with our groups, work with our people, we tell them, I really want you to get to know 12 guys, but I want you to be intentional with 3. Okay? Seemed to work for Jesus, so I think we'll go with that. In closing, and I apologize for going so long, that if you can tell I'm not at all passionate about what we do. We are completely funded by community organizations, churches, private individuals who want to help victims of crime and tragedy. They want to help all law enforcement officers. They want to help our fire department. We're starting to work with our fire department as well. So we have a few different ways that you can support us. We are, as Pastor mentioned, we are going to do an offering at the end. But also, did everyone get that little form? So if you have it, you can use Givelify, which is an app that you can do. What we really would like to see is monthly support partners. To give you an idea of our expenses, just so you know, again, basically volunteers. Last year, our team put in 2,800 hours of work. This year, it'll probably be somewhere around 2,800 to 3,000 hours of work. We just graduated 3 more guys through the National Police and Fire Chaplain Academy, which is the highest level of training for chaplains in the country. Then they go through critical incident stress management. Then they go through tactical first aid. Then they go through a tactical weapons course just so they can understand how to do that. And then there's a lot of other ongoing. Between their uniform, their classes, their bulletproof, each guy costs our organization right around $4,000, $4,500 just to get through the training. We just put 3 guys through it. They don't have vests yet. They don't have tourniquets yet. And they're ready to go get out on the street and start serving. So if you would prayerfully consider possibly a gift today, and then again, if there's a way that you can support us on an ongoing basis, we'd love to have your church support this domestic missionaries. That's what we are. Remember what it says in the Bible, right? It says Jerusalem, then Judea, Samaria, and then so on and so forth, and to the ends of the earth. This is really what we are. And this is the very, very front line. And one other distinction, I mentioned about how on the funding side, you probably don't know this. So, if you commit a crime and you go to jail, okay, let's say it's a heinous crime, you go to jail. The county, the city, they have to provide paid clergy to serve you. You are entitled to your books, you are entitled to prayer stuff, you name it. You just have to ask for it. That's all paid for with our tax dollars, all of us. A few years ago, you remember the officer whose son was killed by the drunk driver on the freeway? Yeah, the young man was driving home with his brother. It was when we had the slushy crud on the ground. Their car lost control. They slid off the road. Guy driving I think it was like an F-150 or something, driving down the road. 4-time felon, no driver's license, has a warrant for drunk driving. The kids slid off the road. They got sideways, and they were trying to get out of the thing. Guys driving down the road. The last words that the one boy heard from his brother was, "Gosh, that guy's not going to stop. He's going to hit us." Killed his brother. So I get a call from my captain. "You need to get to the hospital right now." One of our sergeant's kids, he mentions the name. That kid used to come to my house in a car carrier because we played bunco together. I've known him since he was a baby. I've known the sergeant for 20 years. I know the whole family. Go to the hospital. I run to the hospital. And when I get to the hospital, I had found out that the one boy had died and the other one was in extremely critical care. They come into the hospital. Without an organization like ours, this can happen. I tell them that. We're there for them. Our team's there for them. On them. We're going to care for them, so on and so forth, because our team's already in place. The drunk driver, he bumped his head and got a bruise. He was arrested, and he was sitting down the hall in a room. Now, the next morning, because he went to jail, obviously, the next morning, he was 3 times the legal limit again. The next morning, if he woke up in jail and he said, "What are you doing here?" And they said, "Are you kidding? You killed a kid last night drunk driving." He could have said, "Oh my gosh, this is horrible, this is terrible. I want clergy, I want somebody right now, I want this, I want that, I want this." And the county would have had to provide all that to him. You know what the officer and his family would have got? "Well, you really should get counseling. That's terrible." That's how it's set up. And that's not here. You have a wonderful, Bonner County, they're wonderful people, and they take care of their own. I'm just saying, that's kind of letter of the law. So what we do is it gives us the ability to stand in the gap, and it's because of people like you that support us. So I apologize for taking so long. I thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions at all about us, I believe there is an email address on that form. And if not, I can leave business cards too. Just if you want to touch base, say hello. You know, if you do social media, we have a Facebook page. You want to kind of keep track of what we're doing. Is it on there? Do you guys see it? Is it in the red or something? Yeah. So what? That's the website. Yeah. And then you can contact us through there as well. I know people like to keep track of what's going on and what we're doing and stuff like that. We just got to speak at the National Day of Prayer for our law enforcement officers. That was kind of neat. So, thank you very much. Thanks for listening.
All right. Thank you, Officer Chaplain Thomas. It's good to hear that. He came this morning. I've seen him somewhere. I've seen him somewhere. I've seen him. Not that I went to prison or anything, but oh, okay. But I met him. I saw him at the sheepdog seminar when Uncle Jerry and Dad and I went there, and it's amazing. See, my family, we pray for officer in the sheriff's department for a couple of years now. Because we pick him, so we pray for him almost every day. And it's good to pray for your law enforcement people, the things they go through. And at the same time, they are in the physical battle, and we need to pray for them because they're in a spiritual battle, which is far worse than, everything is bad, but this is really strong because they're bringing Christ to the people and saving them from hell. And so it's just kind of, you just need to please pray for them. It's amazing what they do. Places where we cannot go, they can. That's the missionary thing about, we can be here and support them financially or through prayer and whichever way he has said. And if you guys feel Lord works in your life, if you guys want to do that, please do that, and I know the Lord's going to bless you for that. And please do learn about some of this, what do you call that, medical stuff, doing how to stop bleeding and stuff. It is very important. And, they, like I said, they cannot be everywhere, but you are, you could be anywhere, and you should know something about that to save lives. And thank God I had a chance to do it, so I was able to do basics. And I have never used it, but, you never know. You never know when you need it. So do remember that, and keep them in your prayers. And it was very nice to hear their side of the story, and I'm sure they can also tell you stories which will make your hair on your gives you goosebumps. And I remember at the sheepdog seminar, some of the things I saw, like I was sitting at the edge of my seat and like, wow, we don't see the behind the scenes stuff, but they do. So please do remember that. And also good to have the Hardys, not softies, Hardys, and do congratulate him as the new dad. And how's the baby doing? No, not your wife, the other baby, okay? Okay. Okay, cool. Well, it's good to have him. Do thank him. And we have a visitor at the back. Please do remember to say hi to her. And it's good to have you. And this morning, I'd like to speak on a message entitled Lessons Learned at Life's Bitter Pools. Have you seen a pool? Not the swimming pool one, but like any other pool where there's water and stuff like. And this morning we're gonna look book of Exodus in chapter number 15, and it's the whole chapter, but we're gonna look at couple verses and then go back and forth and see what God has for us this morning. And Exodus chapter number 15, verse 22 to verse number 27, and just a little background. And we see that if you read these, This is where we see that the children of Israel has just come out of Egypt and then come out through the Red Sea, and they are 3 days into their journey into the wilderness when they run out of water. Have you ever been thirsty and there's no water? You know, like really, 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 really thirsty. Your lips are drying off, and you're just trying to make as much saliva you can so you can cool your throat or wet your throat and stuff. It's like, but wilderness, like dry, you know. I remember the first time when I came to America, you know, when, we were coming back from Houston, Texas, and come up into the desert land, you know. And like, I asked the guy, I said, "This fence in the desert, who puts fences in the desert?" And he goes like, "Just wait and see why they put it." So I went a little bit further, I said, "That's why they put it." He pointed to the oil field thing, the oil machine. That's the black gold. That's why they put fences. And he said, if you look carefully, most of that oil field is just close to the neighbor's fence. I said, why? So it can suck the oil from the other side and bring it this side. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that when I was looking at that, it's all desert area. And man, another thing came across my mind. It's like we're driving there in the middle of nowhere. There's a train going right through. And automatically the Western movie scene pops up in my, that's why all the trains got robbed, because it's in the middle of nowhere. But anyways, but what I'm trying to say, when you're in the desert and you know, your car breaks down, no air conditioning, no trees, and no water, and even if you have water, it's like, what do I do? It's like 10 people to feed. I have just one bottle of water, and what do I do? And then slowly, nothing comes, and that water is running out, and you are perspiring, and you even don't know that, and then the thirst is there. Just imagine that part. And the children of Israel, right there, in 3 days into their journey in the wilderness. And that's where we're going to see what's going to happen. And that's where they learn many things. But I'm going to focus on 3 simple things, 3 lessons they learn. Very often in life's bitter experiences, you know, if you tell your children, you know, don't touch that wood stove, it's hot. But they will touch it one of these days to know what hot is. That is a bitter experience. That is a bitter experience. But the next time, they know. They will remember what hot is. And when this happens, they can relate. Once they get the experience of hot, once they touch that wood stove or anything hot, you know, every time you talk about heat, they will remember that part. Experiences are very important things in our life to learn. And we can talk to each other, and we can say, hey, I remember I did this. I mean, sometimes I'll tell my wife, say, I remember I did that. I was so dumb. I don't know why I did it. But I remember those because it gave me thing. One time I thought I was faster than a one-horse electrical motor. And I remember it till this day. See? You see it? Here are my fingers. Can you see it? I remember it still this day. I thought I was faster than that. So we had a machine, like in Fiji there's a traditional kava. We don't drink it, but my grandfather used to run that business. So it's like a root of a tree, and they pound it into powder, and they mix it with water and get this brown muddy water, and they sit down and drink that thing in the evening. So we used to run a business. So before we had the machine, we used to hand pound it. That time I was having the 6 packs. I had this huge metal thing and a steel bowl kind of thing, and we pound it, take that roots into powder, and then we sell it. So we had that, and then finally, my grandfather started to get old and tired, and me complaining about doing that. So he went and bought a machine. So the machine is built in a way, it has a one-horse electrical motor, which runs a belt to a bigger pulley, and that bigger pulley spins another small pulley, and then this one runs this big pulley, the belt, and there's a huge metal piece with a big steel bowl, and it lifts it up and drops it, lifts it up, drops it. And I'm standing on the side of the thing, and I'm bouncing my hand on the belt, because The motor is spinning there. By the time the you see the speed is been reduced, you know. I said, it's not that. So I'm standing there, bouncing my hand on it, bouncing, then slowly started doing this. I said, I'm pretty fast. I'm pretty fast. I'm pretty fast. And then I did that, and the belt flew over there, and the guy whose carver my grandfather was pounding said, what did you do? So I did not do anything. And you need to remember, when you buy a brand new machine pulley, they are sharp-edged. So, and when you went to pick up the belt, the tip of my finger was there. I even did not know that part. I lift my hand, bleeding and everything, get in the car, go to the hospital. So, still today, if I look at it, it reminds me of that. Don't mess with the machines. Don't mess with the machines. Don't mess with the powers beyond your control. But that reminds me, what I'm trying to say, it's an experience I have learned, so that's why I keep trying to make sure that my kids, when I'm using the machine, you stay away from it. Because I have learned it in a hard way, and I don't want them to, but they are children, they will do something, I know. But my wife keeps telling me, like, he's your son. I said, no, he's our son. So, in this passage, Israel is fresh from a spiritual victory. The children of Israel, they had that in the desert 3 days. They are just out of 3 days, still fresh. I mean, I can eat steak 3 days fresh in the fridge. You know, I mean, made 3 days ago in the fridge. Heat it up and eat it. But these guys, they were there. They just came out and they saw a big victory when God parted the Red Sea and he put all. Imagine that. You know, that scene, even your 4K ultra high definition cannot beat. When that Red Sea was parted and children of Israel crossing on dry ground. Have you ever seen a pool by your house or some? As the sun shines and it dries off, soon the water is gone. Just the dirt is left. How long that dirt has to, it has to be dry for the dirt to at least a foot down get dry? A long time. But this one, God parted the Red Sea. You know, and children of Israel crossed. And when Pharaoh and his army are coming in, and God just brings everything down on them. They just saw a victory. God saved their life from death. God brought them out from Egypt. They just saw that victory. But they came to the pools of Marah. They were there. And what is the first thing they do? Whine, complain. That's why I think I've always told you that that's why God compares us with sheep, because we are dumb as a sheep. That's what we do. I mean, I don't know about you, but me, yes, I am. I have done something, I know it's going to be wrong, but I still go ahead and do it. I don't know why, but that is me. But not that much I used to do before. A little bit better now. But, and after 3 days of no water, they came to a place called Marah, where while they were there, they learned 3 valuable lessons. It may be we are going through some trials today. It may be something it may be a very small thing, or maybe we are not. But remember, you will come to this situation in your life when you come to the bitter pools of your life. So this morning, I'd like to encourage us, and I wanna talk about 3 valuable lessons which the children of Israel learned. They have learned many things out of that thing. But this morning, the first thing they learned was they learned some lessons about life. They learned some lessons about life. They learned a lesson about life, that life is a mixture. This life we have is a mixture. It has good times, it has bad times. God, He promised us heaven. He said He will go and prepare a place that where He is, that's where He's going to go and prepare that place that where he is, that's where you can be also. God said, I will provide you. God said, I will do this. But God did not say it's going to be easy. God told the children of Israel, I want you to take to the land which flows with milk and honey. But he did not say that it's going to be easy to go there. But when we reach there, I'm sure he has prepared us for that place. When you have to become an electrical engineer, when you have to become a chaplain, it's not just you wake up one day, okay, I'm going to become a chaplain. No, you have to go through a process he was talking about. You need to know how you can become one. If you have to become a pilot, you just don't wake up in the morning and I'm a pilot, I'm going to go fly a plane. Let's say, Dustin, you going to do that? Just wake up one morning, get in the plane and start flying? I don't want to be on that plane. All right? Or you say, I want to become in the Army or in the Navy or Air Force and all these things, but I'm going to go and do it. No, there's a process to become one. Whatever you do, the same way, God has promised us many things, but there's a process. And this process is going to prune us, trim us, sharpen us, polish us. And God does it in a way. And that's what God was trying to teach the children of Israel. He said, he knew it very well, what they're going to do. He's God. He created us. He said, let there be light, and there was light. He knows every you have, the amount of hair falls out of your head. He knows everything about our life. And do you think he doesn't know, he doesn't care about us? No, he does. He knows everything about us. Life is a mixture. A lesson about life, what they learned, that it is a mixture. Israel had just experienced a blessing, and then now they are facing the bitter pools. Then soon the bitter time was over, they rejoiced. The first bitter thing was they were in bondage. When that was over, that was a victory. Then they came to the Red Sea. Now they are complaining again. Then that God set up that. God said these people need to go through all these things until they fully learn to trust me. So God brought all these trials. He knew what his people were going to do. But in the midst of that, do you see the love of God? No matter what happens, he said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. He loves his children. I suppose they were like a lot of people today. You know, we experience blessings when we're on the mountaintop, and the moment we go in the valley, we forget about it. We're on the mountain, oh, praise God, these things happen. I think we should have the same kind of excitement when we are in the valley. I try the best I can. I try the best I can. You know, sometimes it is, but I don't try to bring it up. I just try to, Lord, it's between you and me. Let's do it. You know, because I know the battle is being won. I just have to do what God wants me to do. Another thing about, they learned about the lessons about life. One thing they learned that life is a mixture. Second thing they learned about the lessons about life was that life has a master. Your life has a master. Like me, I'm master. I'll tell him what to do. I tell him jump. He doesn't ask. He said how high. That's what it is. No, just joking. But life has a master. They learned a lesson about life, that life has a master. Master. When Israel arrived at Marah, they seemed to forget the wonderful things God has done. Never, ever forget what God has done in your life. A lot of Christians, they forget that part. They forget that part, what God has done. I tell you what, never forget that God has allowed you to sit right here and listen to me. That is a blessing for you to be in the house of God. You know, there are many countries, they cannot freely meet like this. Life has a master. Your master has allowed you to be here. Your master has allowed you to safely drive to come over here. Never forget that. And even on your way coming here, you had a flat tire, don't worry. There's always a spare tire. Even if it's not there, somebody's going to drive by. God's going to send somebody to fix it, help you fix it. Or you have your cell phone, AAA. Hey, God works many things out. Remember, your life has a master. They forgot that They forgot about the plagues. They forgot about the deliverance. They forgot the miracle of the Red Sea and everything. They forgot all these things, that the Lord is in absolute control. You need to remember that the Lord is in absolute control of everything in your life. Both of the good times and the bad times. No matter if things are going haywire with you. No matter how bad the situation, it's easy for you to say it, No, I'm telling you, I have been through some situations too. Maybe it's not as bad as what you are going through right now, but I have been through that. And sometimes I even think about it. I walk in town and somebody pulls out a gun and shoots my family right in front of me. What am I going to do? Am I going to give him a gospel tract for doing that? Or I'm going to pull out my gun and shoot him too? Who's better here? I mean, it's a hard decision. It's a hard decision. Believe me, I've been through that sheepdog seminar. Ever since then, it has just changed my life of how will I do this? How will I do this? Even though it might never happen, but not only my family, what about other people's families? What about our church? Anything happens, somebody does these things. All these things, the good times and the bad times. We're having a good time and something happens. I don't know about you, but I think of all these things. I go out of the box and try to think about these things. So you need to remember, no matter how bad the situation, how good the situation, life has a master. God is the master of this thing, and he knows it better than us. Many times we won't understand. People will look at me and say, oh, they did something bad to your family. You should do it bad too. Then who's better here? We are both in the same boat. But it's a human nature to retaliate, to do wrong to people who does wrong. That's the Indian culture where I grew up. If somebody does bad to you, you do bad to them. That's how it goes. Until I received Christ and I said, wow, that is hard. How can I do that? That's when you learn the love of God. That's what we did to Jesus Christ. We crucified him. We crucified our master. He could have got his angels and wiped us all off, but he did not. He loved us. He said, I'm going to go and prepare a place. Still, he's going to go and prepare a place for you. He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. That is our master. Never forget him. Another thing they learned about lessons about the bitter lessons about life. First, they learned that life is a mixture. They learned that life has a master. They also learned that life has a ministry. God used these times, both good and bad, to minister to the children of Israel. What they learned about God is both in these times of life shaped their perception of who God was. When things like this happen, what it happened with the children of Israel, and many things might have happened in your life. Bills paid and food has to be bought and a house and all these things, and God provides you day after day. God is ministering to you. God is trying to shape your life, that you trust God in a way that you have never done it before. Not only that, the same is true about us. Every situation in life serves as a ministry of the Lord. How does this happen as a ministry? Because whatever you go through, somebody has either gone through that, or somebody will be going through that. That's your ministry, because, hey, I have been through that. God is preparing you to go through these situations of life so that you can teach others, encourage others when they are going through the same situation in their life. God has allowed us as parents to do things. Like I said, experience, touching the machine and stuff. I've been through that. I know how it is and everything. And when you're watching the nurses are poking needles all over your finger, it's just, oh man, it is bad. And I remember, it's kind of gross, but I remember they took me to the bigger hospital and then in the operation theater and then put my hand out and they numbed everything like needles after needle. Oh man, this is crazy. And then And then because the bone was popping out, so they had to clip it. And then when it tick, I can feel it here. Ow! And click. I think, can't you just cut it at once, like little by little, and every time it pains over here, you know? And 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 I know how painful it was, so I just keep. Sorry, my bad. So so that's what I go through that, and I'm always like, every time my kids do something, it's like, what happened? Every time something, honey, just take them to the hospital. Take them to the hospital. You know, I mean, like, I'm just like scared when they're just like, they're just kids playing outside. I know, honey. I'm just, I'm not telling you that inside of me that's hurt. I don't want them to get hurt. I don't want them to get hurt. I don't want them to get, but they will get hurt some way or another. But what I'm trying to say is that I have gone through these things, and I try to minister to them in a way like, you're gonna get hurt, and this you have to go to the doctor, and all this kind of stuff. But God is trying to let you go through in this, so that you learn a ministry that you can minister through that. And some people who are not saved, who doesn't know Christ, I mean, a chaplain over here can tell it. He can tell I've been through some experiences, and other cases like that will come. He's getting better at it. He will use that as a ministry to other people. God allows you learn this lesson about life, that life is a mixture of all kinds of things. Life has a master, and life has a ministry which you can use it into other people's life. Second thing, they learn some lessons about themselves. Not only they learned about life, now they learn things about themselves. First thing they found out about the lesson about themselves is that they were living for themselves. That's what they learned. The children of Israel, they were living for themselves. They were only concerned about their bodies, satisfaction, forgetting the great things God has done in their life. And that is what happened to us. It happens to us most of the time. When we go through problems in our life and trials in our life, we start thinking about ourselves. We start to think about ourselves. And when we start to think about ourselves, what happens? We are thinking about ourselves. What are we missing? God. We keep focusing everything on us, and we forget about God. And that same thing happened with Peter. I want to walk on water. God said, yeah, come. And he started walking on. All of a sudden, he started to look at things, and he started to think. When he saw the water, he saw the wind and everything. And he heard the wind, and he saw the waves, and he started to think. He took his focus off God and started. When you are in the middle of the ocean, and you fall in it, what is the first fear you get? Drowning. Then sharks maybe, and all kinds of stuff. All right? The same thing. He moved his focus off God. And the same thing happens to our life, and the same thing happened with the children of Israel. They kept focusing and thinking and living for their own self. That's what they were doing. They did not care what God was. They forgot about everything, but they were just living for themselves. And that is the lesson you and I need to learn. Don't think of yourself. Think of others. Have you ever heard that? Your parents always say, don't think of yourself. Think of your brother. I did not know about it because I was the only child, so no problem. But anyway, I learned it in a way that God wanted me to learn. They were only concerned about their bodily satisfaction. Instead of being caught up in His wonder and glory and worship, they were totally consumed in their personal need. That's what happens to us as humans. We forget about God's glory. We forget about what God has done in my life. We forget about that I'm still breathing. We forget about that God can still provide. We forget about that I'm a healthy living specimen. And we forget about all these things, but we are still focusing. It's like, no, if I don't eat for a day, I will lose 300 pounds. I wish that was true. But that we start to think about ourselves. He can be at his house enjoying a job which is safer and everything, but he lays his life down. Why? Because he's not thinking about himself. He's thinking about how God can use him to do things in other people's life. And the same way with us. Not only that, another thing they learned about the lesson about themselves is that first they were living for self. Secondly, they were not walking by faith, but they were walking by sight. They went to the wilderness. They are there, they're thirsty. Very soon that ill feeling kicked in. I'm thirsty. I need to look. I need to start looking for this. And that is when you go and like, you're thirsty and start seeing mirages, and all kinds of stuff, start to get a little bit, what's that? Yeah. Okay, that's another word for it. But I was thinking, I forgot what. But anyway, that is another word. But you start to, get weird and everything. And they were walking by sight, not by faith. Because they were supposed to trust in God to provide for them, and they were not. From the beginning, they never trusted. They never trusted. It took some miracles for them to believe in God. They came to the Red Sea. It took some miracle for God to part the Red Sea so that they can believe in God. Now they are there. They're still forgetting. They don't want to believe. They don't want to walk by faith, but they're walking by sight. Israel was guilty of looking for satisfaction in the world around them instead of God who brought them. Then when their expectations fail them, then they become disappointed with God. I know a lot of people who were disappointed because that's why they don't want to go to church. Why? Because they were walking by sight, not by faith. They did not trust it in God. They think that everything has to work the way they want it to work. No, God knows better. I am dumb. As a sheep, I don't want my life to be run by me because I know it is not going to end up right. But I want God to run it. Why? I don't want to walk by sight, but I want to walk by faith. I want to trust in the Lord with all, what is that? Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto your own understanding, but acknowledge Him. And that is the thing they missed over there, which they were supposed to do it. And they were the very examples who were supposed to do it because they saw all the miracles firsthand. Firsthand they saw it. And then they should be more into it. But they forgot about that. They still work by sight. Another thing they learned about themselves is that they were never satisfied. They were never satisfied. We are always like, oh, my neighbor has this, so I need to have that. It's kind of like churches in Samoa. One church, like in the village, there's different denominational churches, and one church is like, it has one pinnacle on it, like that sharp thing, and the other church is a new building coming, they're going to put 2 of them. This other church has 3 crosses, they're going to put 6 crosses. This other church has 6 fans, they're going to put 10 fans until the other one comes with the air conditioning, And all this this church has a spigot fence. It's all just like rough wood. They're gonna like get a plan like finished wood to put the fence. It's always a competition. They're never satisfied. They keep doing something to make themselves better and better and better and better. We need to bring that making our physical self better into putting into spiritual sense and say, how can I make my spiritual life better with the help of God? We always are never satisfied. These people, just 3 days before they had seen Lord destroy the greatest army in the world, they had seen God part the great sea, Red Sea, and deliver them. Then they had seen Him take the same situation and have seen everything what God wanted them to do. God had did in their lives. But they were still complaining. I was happy to eat the garlic and all kinds of stuff and walk all day and, complain about it and did not like it. But they had all these things. They saw that God destroyed their enemies. When these things happened, they opened their mouth, they praised God. If you read in chapter number 15, in verse number 1, then sang Moses, it was right after they crossed the Red Sea, and then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord, and spake, saying, I will sing unto the Lord, while he hath triumphantly and gloriously. The horse and his riders had been thrown into the sea. We sing that song all the time. How does it go? I will sing unto the Lord. Hee-ha! There you go. That's the way. We sing that song, but we keep forgetting what God has done. And the last thing this morning, we learn the lessons from life's bitter pools. First thing, they learn about life. Secondly, about themselves. And thirdly, this is the best one. They learn lessons about the Lord. And what did they learn about the Lord? Doesn't stop there. He goes over and beyond. He starts supplying our wants. That is the love of God. That is the love of God. That is the humbleness of God, that He still, even though we whine and complain, He still gives us what we want. God knew that He would face Mara. God knew that the children of Israel will come to that place. He himself about their needs before they did. Nothing in your life takes God by surprise. Remember that. You should write it a banner. Nothing in your life takes God by surprise. He knows everything. He knows. He knows how many times you're going to breathe in the day. He knows how many times your heart beat. You know, the physicians can be wrong, but God knows it. You know, God knew it perfectly that how many times the heart has to beat in a minute in a normal day? How many heartbeats? I mean, not a minute. Yeah, a minute, not in a day. It's like what? 65 something, somewhere there. I don't know, but I think a normal day on a person is like relaxing out, whatever the amount of heartbeat they have. You know, they say, okay, this is the amount of heartbeat. But God is the one who created the heart. He said, this is the amount of time it has to beat to supply you this much of blood. That's what he was the one who created all this. You know, we people build who engineered cars. You know, this is the amount of torque it has to produce to do this, and this is the way the four-wheel drive system. You click a button here that does this and that does that, and it is going to be four-wheel drive. And this is all these things, but that's just mechanical stuff. About this, your system. Okay, we a little bit bigger. How about a mosquito, or a fly, or a virus you cannot see, or a germ you cannot see, and how small they are? And God designed that thing in that way. You know, that is how precise and how accurate He is. This is how it's gonna do things, that this person will do that. And He did it. He created blood for us. And He just did not create it. He created in a way that if you have a cut, the blood, it has the properties to clot and seal up the wound by itself. Most of it, like the small cuts you have. You know, and God, you think God just throws out everything and puts a puzzle and says, there you go. No, He made us in a fearful and a wonderful way. He took time for Him, just like that. But He took time. He sat down. He did everything. He made the first men. And then He made the woman. And then so forth from there. All these things, He took time and built it. This earth, trees. We have gazillion kinds of trees. Some of them we even don't know the names. But God made all of them. He knows it. He is so in detail about all these things. Remember, if the God who can do all these, create all these things, He is not aware of your needs. He doesn't know you need food. He doesn't know you need clothing. He doesn't know you need shelter. He knows it. He knows it. But the devil keeps saying, God doesn't care for you. God cannot provide you that. God cannot give you that. I remember I was in Bible college. I go to the open market when the market is closed and the vendors cannot sell their stuff. They just leave the boxes out there. for the cleaners to come and take it, I will take them home to the dorm. My college buddies said, you don't believe in God is gonna no, God cannot provide you food and everything. I said, this is it. God provided it. I'll come out, take out the bed part, wash it and all the dust and everything. I'll make food out of it and everybody's gonna sit and enjoy. Hey, God promised for need. We just need to go and get it. God is aware of your need. He will do it. Need to remember, when we were in Bible college in Fiji, it's not like America. You get like the American food truck come. You have to make your own food. I remember somebody had a farm with those round cabbages. Every weekend, there's going to be a big bag about this big full of cabbages. We made everything out of that cabbage. You will not find it in the recipe book. That's what we did. We did everything. We did not have money or anything. All we did was like, we go 7:30 to the class, we meet in the church building, and walk back to the dorm. Dorm was a house, we just made it into like a dormitory, and then right after we come home, an hour of lunch, and go back and help in the building of the Bible college. That's what we did every day. I remember that was mango season. Kids, we will, first thing in the morning, we'll check for any ripe mangoes, hide it in your room so you can have it for lunch. It was crazy. And we'll go to the river and go dig for freshwater clams and then bring it home and cook it. That's what life was about. But it taught me a lot because I grew up very spoiled. My family was pretty rich, in the Hindu culture and all these things. I grew up pretty well. Sad to say, I've come up with more better life as some of the people in America have. Even though it's a big country, I don't know why third world countries look at America like that. That everything is good. Everything is good. It's a land of opportunity. I know it's a land of opportunity, but you need to go walk like the American people and make your opportunities. Don't just go and do it the wrong way. But what I am trying to say is that God provided things. God knows our need. He's aware of our need. He will provide for you. He is able. Back again. But then when I got saved, everything was opposite. I was kicked out. No more all this good life. That's when I started to learn and to trust in God. That's when everything started. That's when God started to teach me. No more fancy, nice food. Go eat. Make something. Plant something. Do this. Do that. This is how it is going to be. All the foods I did not like, I started to love them. God changed my life because that's the need God promised to provide, and He did. Another thing about the lessons about the Lord they learned, He is able to meet our need. Not only He is aware of our needs, but He is able to meet it. He is able to do it. Moses was commanded to cast a tree into the water, and when he did, they were made sweet. God planned the route. He put the bitter pools of Mara there, and He also planted that branch which has to go to make the water sweet. He already planned everything. You need to remember, God, wherever He takes you, He has always set up things. You can recall in your life things all over the place right now, and think of the places you got stuck, and something happened to help you be unstuck. There's always something there. God will always, all you need to do is look and trust that God is going to do it. God in His wisdom had already prepared a tree, like I said, that is gonna be there by the pool. When they arrived, he was ready. He manifested His power, and they got what they needed from the Lord. He's able to meet our needs as well. He's able to do it. Not only that, about life, He's aware of our needs. He can meet our needs, and this is nice. He has already provided for our needs. You breathe every day. He has provided those breath. That God provided it. God provided it. I'm standing here. God has given me the strength to stand here. He has provided you already the need. Like I said, victory has been already given to us. We just have to cruise along with the way God wants us to go. Years before Israel arrived at Marah, God caused the seed to germinate in the very place where they would need it. He looked ahead and prepared a way before them. He does it the same to us. He has already prepared everything. He has already prepared the way it's supposed to go. You know, it's funny. When I moved to America, I couldn't work because I was on my green card was not in. When I got my green card, I got a job. God wanted me to have a feel of how to work in America. So I worked at a place at like $8 an hour for a couple months, and then laid off. And then I got another job, and that time we were still staying with mom and dad in Talachi. And God prepared everything. And said, God said, okay, this is the first feel of it. Then he provided me another job. Meanwhile, Mr. Andring and Mrs. Andring, they said, well, we're going to move to our Kokolala house if you guys want to come and house sit for us through the winter. So, but he wanted to make sure that I was able to pay my bills and stuff, you know. So, and I was just waiting. I said, we need to figure out. So God already prepared things the way it's supposed to go. You know, he provided a job and then said, okay, now you need to get to a job which pays a little bit better, because he knew that I have to stay at the Andring's place because you have to pay your electric bill over there. All right? So in the winter, you know, even though house has wood stove, we still had the Mr. Andring has a nice man cave shower, which I loved it. So I need the heat in there. It's electric. The bill's gonna go up, so you need to be able to do it. So God provided everything. And then once the winter was finishing up, I know they have to come back. Then God provided me a house close to the workplace I lived. We lived there for a while, and then God knew that I'm gonna be moving from that place away to another place. And when I was moved to another place, and God knew that I was going to move into that place, and that very time, the water problem in that house, and the same time, my manager who was living in town, he was getting out of the house, and he said, hey, I can talk to my landlord. And the very time the landlord was going on a vacation, he cannot negotiate on the rent, he said, if you keep the same rent, they will move. He said, okay. So we moved in. And right then, it was too far for me to go to that workplace. God opened up job openings at another place which was close to me. So I went there. And God knew that, and I have to move back into Sago so that Uncle Jerry and them can sell their house. They can buy that rental home, and then they can build a house so that I can have that house to live in. So what I'm trying to say is that God has planned all these things. And meanwhile, we are moving from here to there, I learned a lot of stuff, you know. So what I'm trying to say is that God has already provided these things. And once I go through this thing, and I did not think about these things until like 5 minutes ago in my mind, and God just brought it to me that I'm trying to give this illustration because I did not have anything to do with that, but it just fell in right in my head right now. And what I'm trying to say, right now, I'm thinking after I've said all these things, I can't wait for the next house. I can't wait for that. I don't know who prepared it for me, but I'm looking forward for that. So that makes me excited right now. And you can rely the same thing in your life and think about these things and be excited what is the next step God is going to bring in your life. Now remember, whether it's good or bad, you need to be thankful. Lessons learned at the bitter pools of Marah. Lesson about yourself, a lesson about life, lesson about yourself, and lesson about the Lord. Remember, He has already provided your need. And in closing this morning, at Marah, God revealed Himself to Israel as Jehovah Rapha, or the Lord your healer. No matter how bad the situation is, the Lord is the best physician, He said. And we all know it. He will heal. If Israel had never faced the bitter time, they would have never known this aspect of God's character. Just as Job would have never known about God, what God could restore, unless he first lost everything. And you could relate the same thing in your life. You have lost a lot of things in your life, but you would have known the meaning of losing something until you have gone through that. And you can relate these things. The same way with Lazarus. Just as Lazarus would have not known the joy of life if he hadn't lost his own life. Mary and Martha would have not known that Jesus was the resurrection of life unless they had first known grief. What I'm trying to say is that the Lord uses the bitter episodes of life to reveal himself fully to his children. That's what Paul said. When I am weak, that's when I am strong, because that's when God is, he's always, but when you are weak and going through all this, that's when God is carrying you. Remember the footprints on the sand? So remember, this morning, if you are going through things in your life, whether it's good or you're excited, or you have mountain experience or valley experience, just remember that God is always there. And he has a better plan. That God loves us. That God is going to bless you no matter what. His love, even though we crucified him, he still loved us. You think he's not gonna pay attention to his children? How much you pay attention, how much when you kill, something goes wrong, it fell. Oh, something happens. How much we as parents are to our kids? God is God. He is more than us human parents. He's God. He's spiritual. He's everything. He's the creator. He's the great provider. He does everything. How much more he knows? He's bigger than our problems. He's bigger than our needs. He's bigger than everything. He can provide. He can give. Just need to, when you're playing softball, you wear cleats. Why? So you can grab hold. Your feet can dig in and you can move on. The same way is you need to just dig it deep into Christ and stick to him. Stick to him, because he is going to be the one at the end of the day who's going to provide your needs, who's going to protect you, he's bless you, he's going to do everything for you. So I hope and pray that this morning this message would have helped you in some way or another in your spiritual walk with God, that it will just encourage you, or you could use this to encourage somebody else in your, who is going through trials. It will help you. And maybe this afternoon or tomorrow or next week or next year, you might be going through some trials in your life. You'll be able to make sure that what life is, what I am, and what God is. It will help us. All right? So this is the message for this morning, and I thank you for your attentiveness. Now we've gone a little bit further, but it's all for the glory of God. Yeah, all for the glory of God. No. But anyways, this time we're going to take the offering for Officer Thomas, and sorry, we're going to take that offering, and you give as the Lord works things out. Okay, Mr. Babcock, you'd like to pray for it, please? Amen. Thank you. And please do meet with Joel for the VBS thing if you want to take part in it. Thank you very much. You're dismissed.